My family stole $250,000 using my name. Then they showed up at my door. My name is Ruby Shields. I'm 34 years old. Last Tuesday, my father called me at 9 p.m. and told me I owed $250,000. Money I'd never borrowed. For things I'd never bought. On accounts I'd never opened. When I asked him what he was talking about, he said my sister was in trouble and I needed to fix it. When I said no, he told me I wasn't his daughter anymore. I said, then I guess I'm not. And I hung up. What none of them knew was that I'd already found something worse than the debt itself. Something with my mother's handwriting on it. 8 days later, every single one of them showed up at my front door. I opened it and said, too late. Let me back up. I've been a certified public accountant for 10 years. Small firm in Roanoke, Virginia. 14 employees. Mostly small business clients. I handle quarterly filings, tax prep, and the occasional audit. It's not glamorous, but I built it with my own hands. My apartment is a one-bedroom off Franklin Road. I bought my own furniture. Hung my own curtains. There's a desk in the corner of the living room where I do overflow work on weeknights. The place smells like coffee and printer paper. And it's mine. I like numbers. Numbers don't change their story depending on who's listening. A column either balances or it doesn't. There's no well, what I meant was in a ledger. That's why I check my credit report every quarter. Professional habit. 3 bureaus, 3 reports, all clean. At least they used to be. The other thing about me is that I send my father $550 a month. I've been doing it for 3 years. Ever since his auto parts shop in Bedford closed and my mother stopped working. I never asked what it went toward. Groceries, mortgage, business expenses. I figured it was some mix of all 3. I trusted him with the money the same way I trusted him with everything else. My father taught me a lot about numbers. Just not this kind. My family lives in Bedford, about 45 minutes west of Roanoke. Small town, smaller Main Street. The kind of place where everyone knows when your business closes. And 4 years ago, everyone knew. My father's auto parts store, Shields, went under after 24 years. Supply chain problems, online competition, all of it hitting at once. He lost the shop, the inventory, and most of what was in his savings account. He never talked about it. He just stopped going out. Started spending mornings in the garage, afternoons on the couch. My mother, Marion, used to keep the books for the shop. Invoices, payroll, quarterly taxes. She was good at it. Efficient. When the business closed, she went back to being a full-time homemaker. She kept the kitchen spotless and the conversation light. If you asked how Paul was doing, she'd say, your father is figuring things out. My sister Chloe is 27. She dropped out of James Madison University her sophomore year to launch an online business selling handmade candles. It lasted 10 months. After that, she moved back home and the phrase figuring things out got passed down like a family heirloom. Chloe's good at Instagram though. Nice photos. New restaurants. Weekend getaways. Outfits that didn't come from a clearance rack. I didn't think much about where the money came from. I figured our parents were helping. Every Sunday, I'd drive to Bedford for dinner. Meatloaf. Green beans.
Marian puuringsveetaja.
Paul quieter than he used to be. Chloe texting under the table. It felt off. The way a room feels off when someone's been arguing before you arrive. But I kept showing up. That Sunday dinner was the last one where I still believed we were a normal family. 8 months before the phone call, I pulled my quarterly credit report and something was wrong. 3 hard inquiries I hadn't authorized. 2 from credit card companies. 1 from a regional bank. All from lenders in the Bedford area. My first thought wasn't suspicion. It was annoyance. Identity theft is a professional hazard when you work in finance. I called all 3 credit bureaus that afternoon and filed disputes. Then I called my father. I told him I'd seen inquiries from companies near his zip code and asked if anything weird had been going on with his mail. He said probably a system error. Happens all the time. He'd look into it. I didn't believe him completely. A CPA learns to trust paperwork over people. So I placed a 120-day fraud alert on my credit file. A standard precaution that requires lenders to verify identity before opening new accounts. I set a reminder to renew it. Then tax season hit. 15-hour days. Stacks of filings. Client calls stacked back to back. The fraud alert expired. The reminder sat in my phone, buried under meeting notes and deadline flags. I kept meaning to renew it. I never did. When I think about that now, I don't blame myself. I did what any reasonable person would do. I flagged it. I questioned it. And I took a precaution. The reason it still worked is not because I was careless. It's because my father looked me in the eye over Sunday dinner and said he'd handle it. And handling it for him meant buying time. The call came on a Tuesday. I was at my apartment reviewing a client's depreciation schedule when my phone lit up with Dad's name. He didn't say hello. He said, "Your sister owes $250,000. You're going to pay it." Not a question. Not a request. An instruction. I put the depreciation schedule down. Pay what? To who? What are you talking about? He said Chloe had gotten in over her head. Credit cards, loans, things that piled up. He said the collectors were calling. He said it was a family matter, and family matters get handled inside the family. That's not my debt, Dad. He went quiet for a second. Then his voice dropped the way it does when he's about to say something he's already decided. If you don't, you're not our kid anymore. He said it flat. No hesitation. No emotion. Like he was reading terms and conditions. I sat there in my apartment, the one I pay for, with furniture I bought in a city I chose. And I felt the floor shift under me. Not because he'd hurt me. Because he'd meant it. I thought about the $550 a month. The Sunday dinners. The graduation he missed because Chloe was sick. The fraud alert I let expire because he told me he'd handle it. Then I said the only honest thing I had left. Then I guess I'm not. I hung up. I didn't cry. I sat there for maybe 3 minutes staring at the depreciation schedule. Then I opened my laptop, logged into my bank, and pulled my full credit report. I ran reports from all 3 bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and laid them side by side on my kitchen table. It took about 25 minutes for my professional brain to catch up with what my personal brain already suspected. 9 accounts I didn't open. 6 credit cards. 1 personal line of credit. 1 auto loan. 1 store financing account. Every single one registered to my social security number. Every single one mailed to my parents' address in Bedford. The total outstanding balance across all 9 was $251,876. I sat back in my chair and did what any accountant does when the numbers don't add up. I built a spreadsheet. Account name, date opened, credit limit, current balance, payment history, address on file. I sorted by date opened, and a pattern crawled across the screen. The first account was opened exactly 3 months after my father's business closed. Then another 6 months later. Then 2 more the following year. Like someone slowly learning they could get away with it. The auto loan was the newest. Opened 16 months ago. The same month Chloe posted photos of her new ride on Instagram. A Honda midsize. Nothing flashy. I'd liked the post. I remember thinking, good for her. The payments on that car had been coming out of an account in my name for over a year. My CPA brain kept sorting and flagging. My other brain, the one that remembers Sunday dinners and meatloaf and sweet tea, just kept looping one thought. 9 accounts. $250,000. My name on every single one. And my father already knew. At 2 a.m., I was sitting on the floor of my living room with my laptop balanced on a stack of tax textbooks and a spreadsheet glowing red across the screen. I hadn't eaten. Hadn't moved from that spot in 5 hours. I just kept going through the numbers the way I'd go through a flagged return line by line, looking for the story underneath the story. The story was simple. My father lost his business and his pride in the same quarter. My sister never learned to build anything because no one ever made her. And someone in that house decided my credit score was a family resource. I spent 12 years building that credit. 12-hour days during tax season. Nights in the library studying for the CPA exam while my roommates went out. Minimum payments on my own student loans. Paid on time every single month because I understood what a missed payment does to a credit file. They used it like a blank check with my name already signed at the bottom. I thought about calling my mother. I thought about driving to Bedford at 2 a.m. and standing in the kitchen and saying, "Tell me everything." But I didn't, because I didn't need a confession. I needed documentation. I called the 24-hour line for Citibank, one of the 6 credit cards, and requested a copy of the original application. They said it would arrive in 8 to 12 business days. I thanked them, hung up, and wrote a list on a yellow legal pad. Every creditor, every account number, every question I needed answered. I couldn't wait 12 business days for all of them. So the next morning, I did something I hadn't done on a weekday in 4 years. I drove to my parents' house. I got to Bedford at 7:30 a.m. The garage door was open and my father was sitting on a folding chair with a mug of coffee, the way he does every morning since the shop closed. He looked up when I pulled in and I watched him rearrange his face, surprise into something harder. I didn't waste time. I walked into the garage, set my laptop on his workbench and opened the spreadsheet. 9 accounts, my name, your address. Explain. He stared at the screen for maybe 7 seconds. Then he crossed his arms. It was supposed to be temporary. Chloe needed help starting over. I was going to pay it all back. I pointed at the column marked balance. $251,876. Temporary. He shifted in his chair. After everything I did for this family, I cut him off. Where are the applications? The ones with my signature on them. That stopped him. He looked away toward the driveway. Toward nothing. He didn't answer. I heard the screen door open behind me and Chloe came down the porch steps in pajama pants, hair unwashed, holding her phone. She saw the laptop, saw the spreadsheet, saw my face, and her color dropped. What's going on? I looked at Chloe, looked at my father, closed the laptop. I'll find them myself. I drove the 45 minutes back to Roanoke with the radio off and the window cracked. The air smelled like cut hay and red clay. I didn't think about what my father said. I thought about what he didn't say. He never denied it. He never said the signatures were mine. If you've ever sat across from someone you trusted and realized they'd been lying to your face, you know exactly what that drive felt like. 45 minutes of silence and the sound of everything I thought I knew falling apart. The next day at the firm I missed a deadline. The Peterson quarterly filing. A client I'd handled for 8 years without a single late submission. Ethan Holt, the senior partner, called me into his office before lunch. Ethan is 47, ex-military, the kind of man who can spot a misplaced decimal from across the room. He closed the door and sat on the edge of his desk. Ruby, you missed the Peterson filing. That's not like you. What's going on? I almost said I was fine. The word was right there, loaded and ready. But Ethan has this way of looking at you like he's already read the footnotes you're trying to hide. Don't insult me with fine, he said. So I told him not everything but enough. My father. The phone call. The 9 accounts. The $250,000 in debt under my name. Ethan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat quiet for about 12 seconds. Then he said something that rearranged the furniture in my head. Ruby, what they did to you has a name. It's a felony. A felony. Not a family disagreement. Not a misunderstanding about money. A crime with real charges, real consequences, and a sentencing range. Ethan pulled out his phone. I know a lawyer who handles financial fraud. She's sharp and she doesn't waste time. I'll text you her number. He sent it before I left his office. Her name was Rebecca Oakes, and she would become the most important person in this story who isn't related to me by blood. But before I called Rebecca, someone else called me first. My mother called that afternoon. Her voice had that stretched thin brightness she uses when she's pretending everything is normal. The same voice she used when the shop was failing and she'd answer the phone with, "Everything's fine, just busy." She said, "Ruby, honey, your father is just stressed." He didn't mean what he said. "Come to dinner Sunday. We'll sort this out as a family." I was standing in the firm parking lot, keys in one hand, phone in the other. "Mom, there are 9 accounts in my name that I didn't open. Did you know?" The pause lasted long enough for me to hear a car pass on her end of the line. Somewhere in Bedford, my mother was standing in her kitchen holding the same phone she used to call me with cookie recipes, deciding how much truth to portion out. "It was your father, he handled that. I didn't know all the details." I closed my eyes. "You did the books for Dad's business for 17 years, Mom. You know how a credit application works. You know what a signature line looks like." Another pause. Then, "Family takes care of family, Ruby." That phrase. My father had said it the night of the ultimatum. Now my mother. Same words, same rhythm, like a verse they'd rehearsed. Mom, don't call me again about dinner until someone in that house tells me the truth. She started to say something. I could hear the inhale, the beginning of a syllable. Then she stopped. She hung up. I stood in the parking lot and looked at my phone. My mother had almost said something real. Almost. But almost doesn't balance a ledger. Rebecca Oakes worked out of a narrow office on Church Street in downtown Roanoke. Bookshelves floor to ceiling. A single orchid on her windowsill. A coffee mug that said, "I object" in block letters. She was in her 40s. Direct. Clearly someone who'd heard worse than what I was about to tell her. I handed her the credit reports, the spreadsheet, and the screenshots I'd taken at 2 a.m. She spread them across her desk and read them the way I read a balance sheet. Fast. Precise. Skipping nothing. After about 15 minutes, she looked up. This is textbook identity theft, federal offense, multiple counts. She walked me through it step by step. File an identity theft report at identitytheft.gov, which generates an FDC affidavit. File with IC3.gov so the FBI has a record. Take the affidavit to the local police and file a report. Then freeze credit with all 3 bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. After that, dispute every fraudulent account individually with each creditor. Do you know who opened these accounts? She asked. My father. My sister spent the money. And I think my mother signed some of the applications. Rebecca set down her pen. You understand what this means? This will be a criminal matter. Against your family. I looked at the stack of papers on her desk. 9 accounts. $250,000. 4 years of fraud. I'm sure I'm not paying for something I didn't buy. Rebecca nodded once. Then we start with the FDC report tonight. She stood up and shook my hand. Not a sympathy handshake. A let's get to work handshake. I drove home and opened my laptop. That night, I sat at my desk and broke down the $250,000 account by account, the way I'd break down a client's P&L. Citibank, $30,000. Opened 3 years and 1 month ago. Purchases. Electronics, designer clothing, Sephora orders. Bank of America, $24,000. Hotels, Airbnb bookings, restaurant charges in Nashville, Miami, Savannah. Every one of those trips showed up on Chloe's Instagram. I double-tapped every single one. Discover, $20,000. Streaming subscriptions, grocery delivery, general spending, low and steady like someone living off it as a monthly allowance. American Express, $33,000. Furniture, appliances, a bathroom renovation at my parents' house. I remembered my mother posting a photo of the new vanity last spring. She'd captioned it, "Little upgrade." Wells Fargo personal line of credit, $54,000 in cash advances. My father pulling cash directly from a credit line attached to my social security number. This was the one that hit hardest. Cash leaves no receipt trail. Just disappears. Auto loan through a Honda dealership, $40,000. The car Chloe drives every day. Registered to my name. Insured under my name. Parked in my parents' driveway under my name. Best Buy store credit, $13,000. A 75-inch television, a gaming console setup, and a stack of appliances. The remaining $37,876 was accrued interest, late fees, and penalties. 4 years of minimum payments made just often enough to keep the accounts active, and just late enough to generate fees that compounded quarterly. My sister was living my credit score. She was posting pictures of a life financed by my name, and I'd been liking every single one. Chloe texted me the next day. Can we talk? Not about money, just sister stuff. I called her back against my better judgment. She opened light. Asked about work, mentioned a recipe she'd seen online. Talked about the weather like we were two people who hadn't just discovered a $250,000 fraud between us. Then the pivot came. Look, Dad shouldn't have said what he said. That was wrong. But if you could just help with a couple of the payments until I get back on my feet. Chloe, the auto loan for the Honda you're driving is in my name. Silence. Dad said he handled that. He handled it by using my social security number. The registration is in my name. The insurance is billed to me. You've been driving a car I'm legally responsible for. She went quiet for 8 seconds. Then she did what Chloe always does. She redirected. Why does everything always have to be about money with you? You have a career. You have stability. I have nothing. You have a $40,000 car that I'm paying for." She hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand and felt the old pull, the reflex to call back, to smooth it over, to find the middle ground that makes everyone comfortable. That's the thing about being the responsible one in a family. The habit of fixing doesn't shut off just because you're the one who's broken. I almost called her back. I picked up the phone, looked at her name on the screen and put it down. The $550 I'd been sending home every month. I did the math. Over 3 years, that was $19,800. $19,800 sent to a house that was already running on my stolen name. I closed the spreadsheet and went to bed. The envelope from Citibank arrived on a Thursday. I knew what it was before I opened it. The return address said card services, and it was thicker than a statement. I sat at my kitchen table and pulled out the credit application for the Citibank account, the one carrying $30,000 of someone else's purchases under my name. I turned to page 3. Signature line.
Applicant signature.
I looked at it for a long time. I signed my name with a lean slight right tilt, quick strokes, and a capital R that loops tight at the base like a fish hook. I've signed thousands of documents that way. Tax returns, engagement letters, certified financials. It's muscle memory. The signature on the Citibank application wasn't mine. The R was rounder. The letters stood straighter. The pen pressure was heavier, the way someone writes when they're copying instead of flowing. I recognized it the way you recognize a voice through a wall. Not by what it's saying but by the shape of it. It was my mother's handwriting. Marion Shields, who used to write my name on brown paper lunch bags in 3rd grade, who addressed my birthday cards every year in that same round upright script. She forged my signature on a credit application. I set the paper down. My hands weren't shaking from fear. They were shaking from the kind of anger that stays quiet because it knows exactly what to do next. I took a photo of the signature page, then a photo of the full application. Then I emailed both to Rebecca with one line. "It's my mother's handwriting." I put the application back in the envelope, placed it in my file folder, and labeled the tab. My mother forged my name. Now I had proof. Rebecca called within the hour. "This changes the case. Ruby, forgery is a separate charge from identity theft, and if your mother signed those applications, we're looking at conspiracy on top of it." She asked if I thought Marion had signed more than one. I thought about my mother, the woman who kept Paul's books for 17 years, who could fill out a quarterly tax form in her sleep, who knew the difference between a 1099 and a W-2 better than most of my junior clients. "I think she signed more than one," I said. "Then we request copies from every creditor. If her handwriting shows up on multiple applications, that's a pattern. That's not a one-time lapse in judgment. That's an ongoing scheme." I didn't say anything for a moment. Rebecca let the silence sit. Then I said, "She packed my lunches. She drove me to school. She sat in the front row at my college graduation and cried." Rebecca's voice was careful but unsparing. "And she forged your name on a credit application. Both of those things can be true, Ruby. Both of those things can be true." That sentence landed like a stone dropped into still water. Quiet impact. Rings spreading outward. I thought about my father's voice on the phone. "You're not our kid anymore." And I realized something cold and simple. They didn't stop seeing me as their daughter when I refused to pay. They stopped seeing me as a person the day they decided my name was something they could borrow without asking. "File the FDC report," I said. Rebecca said she'd start the paperwork. I hung up and sat in the quiet of my apartment. The lunch bags, the birthday cards. The same handwriting. That evening, I sat at my desk with my laptop open to identitytheft.gov. The site walks you through it step by step. Personal information, description of the fraud, list of compromised accounts. I entered all 9. Name, account number, date open, outstanding balance. The system generated my identity theft report and an FDC affidavit automatically. I printed both and put them in my file folder next to the Citibank application with my mother's handwriting. Then I picked up the phone and called the credit bureaus. Equifax first, then Experian, then TransUnion. Each call took about 18 minutes. I gave them my social security number, confirmed my identity, and placed a credit freeze on all 3 files. A credit freeze means no one, not a bank, not a store, not a dealership, Can open a new account using my information without a PIN that only I have. It's a locked door. I knew what would happen next. The creditors had already received my dispute filings. With the freeze in place, they'd launch formal investigations. They'd contact the address on file, my parents' house in Bedford, to verify account activity. My family would start getting phone calls, letters, maybe visits. I sat back in my chair and looked at the FTC report confirmation on my screen. A case number, a timestamp, a federal record that my identity had been stolen by the people who gave me my name. I wasn't hiding what I'd done. I just wasn't warning them either. Outside my window, the street lights on Franklin Road clicked on one by one. Day 1. Day 3. I was at the firm halfway through a payroll reconciliation when my phone buzzed. Mom. I answered because I needed to know how far the dominoes had fallen. Ruby, someone from Citibank called the house. They're asking about an account dispute. What did you do? Her voice wasn't bright anymore. It was thin. Stripped. That would be my dispute. What dispute? I reported the accounts I didn't open. All 9 of them. The credit card companies are investigating. I could hear her breathing change. Shallow. Fast. The way someone breathes when the floor tilts. You can't do this. You'll destroy this family. The family was destroyed the day someone forged my signature on a credit application. I let that sit. I know it was you, Mom. The silence on her end wasn't empty. It was full. Full of calculations. Full of routes she was mapping in her head. Full of every excuse she'd rehearsed. When she finally spoke, her voice had dropped to something raw. I was trying to hold us together. By committing a felony. She started crying. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes out like air from a slow leak. I closed my eyes. Ethan appeared in my doorway, coffee in hand, and mouthed, "You okay?" I shook my head once. He nodded and stepped back. Before Marion hung up, she said one more thing. "Please don't do this to your father." I almost laughed. Almost. I didn't do anything to anyone, Mom. I reported a crime. She hung up. That was day 3. The calls to their house were just starting. Day 4. My father called. No worms. No guilt. Just threat. You pull those reports back right now. You're embarrassing this family in front of creditors, in front of people we know. I was eating a sandwich at my desk, phone wedged between my ear and shoulder. I filed a federal identity theft report, Dad. It can't be pulled back. I am your father. And I am the person whose name is on $250,000 of debt she didn't create. Those 2 things are both true. He hung up without saying goodbye. Day 5 brought Chloe, and Chloe brought a new strategy. First, she texted me a screenshot of a message she'd sent to a friend. "My sister is ruining our lives because she won't help family." Classic Chloe. Perform the wound for an audience. Then she sent a direct message to my firm's Instagram account. I didn't see it. Ethan did. He monitors the firm's social accounts as part of client relations. He walked into my office holding his phone screen out. The message read, "Is your employee Ruby Shields involved in a family financial dispute? You should know what kind of person works for you." I read it twice. My sister had gone after my livelihood. The one thing I built without anyone's help. The one thing they hadn't managed to put their names on. "That's my sister," I said. Ethan didn't blink. "Do you want me to respond?" "No." Screenshot it. Forward it to Rebecca. Rebecca confirmed that evening. Contacting someone's employer to pressure them during an active dispute could constitute harassment. She added it to the file. Day 5 late evening. Rebecca called from her office. I could hear the click of her fountain pen in the background. The Citibank application came back confirmed. Their fraud department compared the signature against your verified signature on file, and it's not a match. They're closing the account and removing it from your credit report. 1 down, 8 to go. There's more. 2 other application copies arrived today, Bank of America and Wells Fargo. I had a handwriting comparison done. Both signatures are consistent with the Citibank forgery. Same hand. 3 forgeries. 3 separate applications. 3 separate counts of forgery. Rebecca continued. I filed the police report using your FTC affidavit, and the IC3 report to the FBI went in this morning. From here, the investigation is in the hands of law enforcement. What happens now? They investigate. They may contact your family directly, your father, your mother, potentially your sister if they can establish she had knowledge. I need you to have zero contact with them from this point forward. Zero contact. I repeated it in my head like a rule from a textbook. Zero contact with the people who used to pass me the mashed potatoes on Sunday nights. Rebecca must have heard the silence hardening. Ruby, you didn't create this situation. You're responding to it. There's a difference. I said I understood. I thanked her. I hung up and sat in my apartment, the one I furnished myself in the city I chose, at the desk where I do honest work for honest clients. 9 accounts. 3 confirmed forgeries. 1 family. And a line I couldn't uncross even if I wanted to. Day 6 was quiet. No calls. No texts. No knocks on the door. For the first time since the Tuesday night phone call, my phone sat on the kitchen counter and didn't make a sound. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt the quiet the way you feel a missing tooth. Not pain exactly, but the constant awareness that something used to be there and isn't. I cleaned my apartment that morning. Wiped the counters. Scrubbed the bathroom. Organized the file folder on my desk into labeled tabs. Credit reports, application copies, FDC documents, correspondence with Rebecca. I lined up the tabs the way I align columns in a spreadsheet. Then I made breakfast, eggs, toast, black coffee. I ate at the table where 6 days earlier I'd laid out 9 accounts and watched my father's face confirm everything I already knew. That evening I did something I hadn't planned. I pulled out the Citibank application copy, the one with my mother's handwriting, and held it next to an old birthday card I'd kept in a drawer. The card said, "Happy birthday, Ruby girl," in Marion's round upright script. The application said Ruby M. Shields in the same round upright script. Same hand. Same R. Same woman who packed my lunches in 3rd grade and signed away my financial identity in her 50s. I put both back in the folder. I didn't cry. I made dinner, pasta Jared sauce, nothing special, and ate it standing at the counter. Ethan texted at 8 o'clock. "You don't have to be okay, but you're doing the right thing." I wrote back, "I know." Then I washed my dish, dried it, and put it away. 9 o'clock that night, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Chloe standing in the hallway in a jacket I recognized from one of her Instagram posts. Camel-colored, oversized, probably $350. Charged to my name most likely. I opened the door but didn't step back. I stood in the frame. "Ruby, please." Her eyes were red. She'd been crying in the car. "I know I messed up, but you filed a police report. They're going to arrest Dad. Dad committed identity theft. Mom forged my signature. You spent the money. I didn't know it was in your name. Dad said he got a loan. You're driving a car registered to me, Chloe. The insurance is billed to me. You didn't once look at the registration in the glove box." She blinked. "I'm your sister." "Yes. And you're also the reason I have $250,000 of debt. I'll spend years clearing from my record." She started to cry harder. "What do you want me to do?" I looked at her, my younger sister, standing in my hallway wearing clothes she didn't pay for, asking me to tell her what to do, the way she's always asked someone to tell her what to do. "Get a lawyer, Chloe, because I already have one." I closed the door, locked it, leaned against it with my back to the wood and breathed. Through the door I heard her stand there for another 15 seconds. Then footsteps. Then the stairwell door. I didn't move for a while. That was day 6. Day 7. They came together. Morning. Day 7. Rebecca called early 8:15 before I'd finished my coffee. Update. 6 of 9 creditors have now confirmed fraud. They're removing those accounts from your credit report entirely. Balances 0. Trade lines deleted. I wrote the number on a sticky note. 6 down, 3 pending. "The auto loan is more complicated," she said. "The vehicle is still in your sister's physical possession. The lender may require the car returned to the dealership before they close the account." "What about my credit report in the meantime?" "The fraud flag is in place. The loan won't affect your score going forward, but full removal could take 60 to 90 days. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "And the criminal side?" Rebecca paused. "That's up to the DA's office and the FBI at this point. With 3 confirmed forgeries, your FTC report, the IC3 filing, And the police report there's more than enough for charges. But criminal cases take time. Months potentially. I looked out my kitchen window. The morning light was hitting the building across the street in that clean, early way that makes everything look sharper than it is. I think it might already be too late, I said. For them. Rebecca was quiet for a beat. Ruby, whatever happens today, if anyone from your family shows up, don't engage without me present, or at minimum, don't let them pass the door. Understood. I hung up and cleaned my apartment, wiped the counters, folded the laundry, made my bed, set the file folder on the dining table, credit reports, spreadsheet, application copies with my mother's handwriting. Neat, organized, ready. I didn't know they were coming, but some part of me must have. While I was folding laundry, I remembered Virginia Beach 6 years ago. Back when the shop was still open and Chloe was still in college and none of us had any idea what was coming. My parents rented a house for the weekend. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a screened porch and a view of the dunes. Paul set up a small charcoal grill on the sand and made burgers the way he always did. Too much pepper, not enough salt and somehow perfect. Marion sat in a beach chair reading a paperback with the cover half peeled off. Chloe, 23 years old and supposedly studying business, spent an hour building a sandcastle with a moat system that actually worked. I sat on a towel and watched all of them. My father flipping burgers with a spatula he'd brought from home. My mother turning pages with sand on her fingers. My sister laughing at her own engineering. Paul looked over at me and said, "This is what it's all about, girls' family." I believed him. At that moment on that beach, with smoke from the grill curling sideways in the wind and the sound of waves behind everything, I believed every word. That memory is real. The burgers were real. The sandcastle was real. My mother's laugh was real. But none of it means I owe those people my credit score, my career, or my future. Loving a memory doesn't mean you owe it your future. I finished folding the laundry and put it away. Then I sat at the table and waited. Not for a specific thing. Just for whatever was going to happen next. The phone rang at noon. "Paul." I answered. His voice was different from every other time he'd called this week. Not angry, not threatening. Hollowed out. Like someone had taken a spoon to the inside of him and scraped. A collection agency called this morning. They said they're dropping pursuit on the Wells Fargo account because it's been flagged as fraud. They said I might be contacted by law enforcement. I didn't respond. "Do you have any idea what you've done, Ruby?" I reported identity theft, which is what happened. I am your father. You don't file federal reports on your own father. You don't send the FBI after your own family. You don't open credit accounts in your daughter's name and forge her signature. We can go back and forth on what people don't do, Dad, but I think you know who started this. His voice cracked. Not with sadness. With the sound of a man realizing his authority has run out of currency. "We're coming over, all of us. We need to talk about this in person. This ends today." "Don't. We'll be there by 3 o'clock. The line went dead. I sat with the phone in my hand for a full minute. Then I called Rebecca. She answered on the second ring. "They're coming. All 3. 3 o'clock. Don't let them in. If they become aggressive, call the police." "I won't call the police on my own family. Ruby, they already committed crimes against you. Protecting yourself isn't punishment." I told her I'd handle it. She told me to call her the second they left. I said I would. Then I put the phone down and looked at the table. Folder. Documents. Proof. 255. At 255, I was sitting at my dining table with the folder open in front of me. FDC report printed and paper clipped. Spreadsheet printed on legal size. 3 credit applications with my mother's handwriting on the signature line. Each one in a clear plastic sleeve. I straightened the edges. Aligned the paper clips. Squared the folder against the table's edge. It looked like I was preparing for an audit, which in a way I was. On the wall behind me, my CPA certificate hung in its frame. Virginia Board of Accountancy, Ruby M. Shields, Certified Public Accountant. 10 years of clean work. Thousands of clients. Not a single ethics complaint. I thought about something Ethan told me the day he gave me Rebecca's number. He'd said, "You didn't fail them, Ruby. They failed you." At the time, I'd nodded without really hearing it. Now, sitting at the table with my evidence organized and my family 3 blocks away, I heard it. The doorbell rang at 3:01. I stood up, smoothed my shirt, a plain navy button-down, the kind I wear to the office. I walked to the front door, looked through the peephole. Paul. Marion behind him. Chloe behind her. All 3. My father's jaw was set the way it gets when he's already decided how a conversation is going to go. My mother's eyes were red. Chloe was looking at her phone. I put my hand on the knob, took one breath, opened the door. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I stepped to the side and held the door open without a word. Paul entered first, the way he always enters a room, shoulders forward, chin up, like he still owns whatever space he walks into. Marion followed, clutching her purse with both hands. Chloe came last, still looking at her phone, and stopped when she saw the folder on the table. I closed the door behind them. Sit down. Paul pulled out a chair. Marion sat beside him. Chloe took the chair farthest from me near the window. I stayed standing. Paul cleared his throat. We're going to fix this. As a family. I've thought about it and I think we can set up a payment plan. A payment plan. I repeated it back flat, the way I'd repeat a number that didn't make sense on a tax return. For $250,000 of debt you opened in my name without my knowledge. It was for the family, Ruby. Everything I did was for. Let me show you what you did. I reached for the folder, opened it, pulled out the spreadsheet. The room went still. Not quiet. Still. The kind of still that happens when everyone in a room realizes the person they expected to cry is about to read them a balance sheet instead. I laid the spreadsheet on the table facing them and tapped the first line with my index finger. My voice was level, steady. The same voice I use when I present audit findings to a client who doesn't want to hear them. Let me walk you through this. Citibank, $30,000. Opened 3 years and 1 month ago. I slid the Citibank credit report across the table. Bank of America, $24,000. Slid the next page. Discover, $20,000. American Express, $33,000. Each page landed in front of my father like a card being dealt. Wells Fargo personal line of credit, $54,000 in cash advances. Paused on that one. Cash, Dad. No receipts. Just money pulled straight from a credit line attached to my social security number. Paul's jaw tightened. His hands went flat on the table. Auto loan, $40,000. The Honda that Chloe drives to get coffee every morning. Chloe made a sound. Not a word. Just a sound. Like air being pressed out of something. Best Buy store credit, $13,000. And $37,876 in accrued interest and late fees. I let the silence hold. Then I pulled out the 3 application copies in their plastic sleeves. And here's the part that changes everything. I held up the Citibank application and pointed to the signature line. This is your handwriting, Mom. Marion's face went white. Not red. Not flushed. White. Like something had been unplugged. I slid the Bank of America application across. This one too. Then Wells Fargo. And this one. Marion's hands moved to her lap. She gripped her own fingers. 3 confirmed forgeries, I said. 3 separate criminal charges. Forgery, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud. Paul stood up so fast his chair hit the wall behind him. This is family. You don't send your own family to prison. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I looked at my father, this man who used to carry me on his shoulders at the county fair, and I said, you sent yourself there the day you forged my name. Chloe started crying. This isn't what I wanted. What did you want, Chloe? The car, the trips, the credit cards. You got all of that under my name. I looked at my father. You told me I wasn't your kid anymore. You were right. Your kid wouldn't have filed that report. I did. The room went quiet after Paul's chair hit the wall. He stood by the window breathing hard, his back to everyone. Chloe was crying into her sleeve, and my mother, Marion, sat perfectly still in her chair, hands folded in her lap, looking at the 3 application copies fanned out on the table in front of her. When she spoke, her voice was so small I almost didn't catch it. I thought we'd pay it all back before you ever knew. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the applications. At her own handwriting. Your father lost everything when the shop closed. You don't know what that did to him. He stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. He sat in that garage every day like he was waiting for something to start again. While I was folding laundry, I remembered Virginia Beach 6 years ago. Back when the shop was still open and Chloe was still in college and none of us had any idea what was coming. My parents rented a house for the weekend. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a screened porch, and a view of the dunes. Paul set up a small charcoal grill on the sand and made burgers the way he always did. Too much pepper, not enough salt, and somehow perfect. She swallowed. When Chloe needed help, he saw a way to fix something. And I went along with it because I was trying to hold this family together. I thought if we just kept the payments current, if we just held on long enough, you'd never have to know. She looked up at me then, and her eyes were the eyes of a woman who had spent 4 years living inside a lie she told herself was temporary.
I'm sorry, Ruby.
I looked at my mother. I saw the woman who drove me to school every morning for 12 years, who sat in the bleachers at my track meets, who cried at my graduation. I also saw the woman who sat at a kitchen table and carefully copied my signature onto a credit application, then mailed it, then did it again, then did it a third time. You held the family together by forging my name on a credit application. I know. And you watched me send $550 a month to this house, while you were stacking debt under my social security number. She had nothing to say to that. You said family takes care of family. I picked up the application copies. You're right. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking care of the only person in this family who didn't commit a crime. Me. Paul turned from the window. So what? You're going to throw us away? Your own parents. You threw me away first, I said. On a Tuesday night over the phone. I picked up the folder and closed it. Placed it under my arm the way I carry client files at the office. Then I told them what was already done. Credit freeze on all 3 bureaus. FDC identity theft report filed. IC3 report submitted to the FBI. Local police report on record. 6 of 9 creditors have confirmed fraud and are removing the accounts from my credit report. Paul took a step forward. You can withdraw the reports. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. No, I can't withdraw them. Federal filings don't work that way. And even if they did, I wouldn't. Chloe spoke through tears. Ruby, please. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back every cent. This isn't about payback, Chloe. This is about accountability. You don't get to use someone's identity and call it a family favor. I walked to the front door, opened it. The hallway lights spilled in, ordinary and flat. I need you to leave. Paul didn't move. Ruby. I spent 12 years building a life, a career, a credit history. You used it like a blank check, and then told me I wasn't your daughter when I wouldn't cover the bill. I held the door open. You said I wasn't your kid. Fine, then I'm not. And that means I don't owe you silence. I looked at each of them one more time. My father, whose hands were shaking. My mother, whose face hadn't moved. My sister, whose mascara had drawn dark lines down both cheeks. You stopped being my parents the day you forged my name. They stood at the doorway. Nobody moved. The hallway hummed with fluorescent light and the faint sound of a neighbor's television through the wall. Paul looked at me one last time. His voice was low, stripped bare, nothing left in it. It's not too late to fix this, Ruby. I looked at my father, then my mother, then my sister one by one. The man who taught me to ride a bike. The woman who packed my lunches. The girl who built sand castles with a working moat. Too late. I closed the door, turned the lock, leaned my back against it, and stood there in the quiet. Just the hum of the refrigerator. Just the clock on the wall. Just the sound of my own steady breathing. After a minute, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Then the stairwell door. Then nothing. I walked to my desk, sat down, opened my laptop, pulled up the Peterson quarterly filing. The one I'd missed last week, the one Ethan had flagged. I adjusted a depreciation entry, cross-referenced the balance with the general ledger, saved the file, and started working. 4 weeks later, my credit report showed 8 of 9 fraudulent accounts fully removed, balances zeroed, trade lines deleted. The remaining one was in final dispute resolution, and Rebecca said they'd be clear within 60 days. My credit score had already climbed back 50 points. Rebecca told me the DA's office was reviewing the case. 3 confirmed forgeries, a police report, an FDC filing, and an IC3 submission gave them plenty to work with. She said charges were likely but not guaranteed, and that the process could take months. Chloe returned the Honda to the dealership. She didn't have a choice. The auto loan had been voided as fraudulent, and the lender wanted the vehicle back. Paul retained a criminal defense attorney, which meant he was taking it seriously for the first time since this started. Marion sent me a letter. Handwritten. 5 pages. On the same stationery she used for birthday cards. I read it at the kitchen table. I didn't respond. Ethan gave me a raise. He said, "You handled a crisis better than most people handle a tax audit." I told him I just followed the documentation. He said that was exactly the point. On Saturday, I went to the farmer's market on Main Street. I bought tomatoes, a loaf of bread, and a jar of honey from a woman who keeps bees in Nelson County. I put flowers on my kitchen table, yellow ones, the small kind that don't need a vase. I ate dinner alone and it tasted fine. I didn't destroy my family. They handed me the invoice for a life they couldn't afford. And when I refused to pay, they called it betrayal. I call it a boundary. Here's what I learned. Loyalty isn't a blank check. Love isn't supposed to cost you your name, your credit, or your future. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do for the people you love is to stop paying for the life they refuse to build on their own. That's my story. 9 accounts. 3 forged signatures. And the answer that changed everything. No. If this story reminded you to check your credit report, do it today. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.